My guy, Luka. So excited to have you back on the show here today. You got the new program, Compound V. For people I haven't seen the boys, superhero theme today. So I want to start with your origin story, and I would love to hear just who you are, what you're all about, and what got you started in coaching.
I'm going to try to keep this one, decently short. Let's put it that way. But it was, I think if I zoomed out, when I look back, Foresight's 2020, it definitely was basketball for me, because basketball was a love of my life for a long time. But even that, I try to tell people, it's not like I picked up a basketball and I loved it, right? Like I always go back to Cal Newport's book that's called So Good They Can't Ignore You, where he talks about the passion hypotheses, right? Like a passion hypothesis is pretty much that people think like, they're going to start doing something and it's like, oh my God, I love this, and then they love it forever, and then they get more into it. But like I was a scrawny kid. I was short, I come from the Balkans. Players are usually big in basketball, tall. Yep. I wouldn't get picked. I was the youngest of three brothers. Again, like I wasn't good at basketball, really. I wouldn't say it's like natural talent, right? So I really had a chip on my shoulder. It was one of those things where the chip on my shoulder made me practice. Because I used to, when I was a kid, like really young a kid, I'd go to these basketball camps my parents would send me to from a guy named Judas Doc, who's like a Slovenian basketball legend. And same thing, like I'd get beat all the time. Like, nobody likes getting beat, right? Nobody likes sucking. So, and I think I had a lot of insecurities, and those insecurities made me work hard, like really, really hard, like almost obsessively, not almost, probably, because straight up obsessively. And the better I got, because of course, when you work hard, you get better, right? Yep. You get more competent. And just like we know that competence is one of those, factors of self-determination theory, like intrinsic motivation, right? And so the better I got, the more passionate I got, the more I work harder. It kind of created this feedback loop. And that's, I think that was the origin of me getting into basketball. And now, obviously, it's like, why not others? Because I did play a lot of sports when I was younger. But I think that one just I think that I got more pissed off because I did get kind of bullied more, right. and talk shit to more. So, and that kind of took on a life of its own. And getting into actually, in Europe, you play for the juniors of a pro team, right? It's not like high school is where it's at. So, I got to, try out for Olympia, which is the best team in the country. And this is like me at, 13, 14 years old, and started training there. And then, I would say like, coaches had just a huge influence. This is the Foresight 2020. Like coaches had a huge influence on my life. When I was with Olympia, we trained at a level that, today would probably be illegal, with how things are, and everybody's like, oh my God, don't do too much and too hard. I trained like an Olympian basically, and got pushed, and many times we hated the coach, but when I look back, it was like, man, that dude made us resilient, made us play together, work together, made us overcome adversity, made us realize that like, man, you can accomplish these things that sometimes you think are impossible. Yeah. And and so that was the coach of that generation for me. His name was Tomasz Jontas. And then I moved on to a team called Janče, who was like a startup team. Because pretty much the team I played for, imagine like every NBA player that's played in that's playing NBA from Slovenia, it came through that system essentially, right? Yeah. So for me, making the 12 was like the hardest work of all time, let alone to try to make the starting five. So I went to Janče. We were like this startup team, almost like that movie, with the Dispensables or whatever it was. You remember that? Yeah. The Replaceables. The Replaceables.
The Replaceables. That's it. Yes.
No shit. It was like the team was made up of some talent knuckleheads, like hard workers, and we ended up going. We had to start Division 2, made it to Division 1 next year, and then went up going to 3 Final Fours in 4 years. It was like a wow, Cinderella story, kind of make a movie about it type of thing. And our coach there was, not as tactical, as good strategically, but he was incredible with this, with the mind and the heart. Yep. And And, that guy did so much for me as far as my confidence and everything else. But also, that's when I played there, those were my knucklehead years. I was in crime, I was selling drugs, I was doing a lot of those things. And he was such a big factor in me eventually, making the call to go to college in the US, to get away from that, but continue to, pursue basketball. And when I look back, I mean, these were truly like these figures in my life that guided me. And obviously, like my dad was a huge role model, father figure. But my dad, when we moved back from England when I was 11, kind of right when the war started in Yugoslavia, he stayed in England to try to make a better life for us. We had to come back, because he got let go. The economy was bad, and so really coaches would be on a day-to-day basis the kind of the male father figures that guided me. And I think that later on too, it's one of the reasons I got into coaching, because it did, it'll sound like a little cornyish and stuff, but man, I was in some pretty shitty stuff, doing some pretty bad stuff. And I remember the conversation when, he said, hey, like, I know what you're doing, and there's only two paths here. Like, one path leads nowhere good. I don't know where, but it's nowhere good, and he's like, you're the hardest working player I've ever coached in my life. Like, you're psychotic to a degree. And it's like, if you take that, and you go this direction, you can do some incredible things. And he knew what would hurt me, right? So he knew that if he benched me, because what would start happening, I'm starting to come too late to practice a little bit because I'm doing drops throughout the city and stuff like that. And like, okay. So, and that hurt me more than anything, me not playing. Yeah. And he knew how to pull those strings, like, okay, like, you shall see, and it's like, and it did, he made the moves that he knew that I would respond to, and it was like, okay, I'm not going to be late. I'm going to be back to being early again, staying late, working the hardest, the whole shebang. And it truly was like one of the decisions, I mean, there's a number of factors of why I decided to go to the US, but that was certainly one of them. And, underlyingly, so there's always an underlying story, right? I really like to tell this because I don't think I've told it enough, but my mom opened up a gym when I was 13 years old. And she, we came back from England. She had to, basically essentially do two jobs. She worked at the bank half the day. The other half the day, she worked at the gym that her and her friend opened. So her friend would do the morning shift. She'd do like the afternoon shift. And in that gym, it was in the top of this building called Partizan, which are these physical education buildings in Slovenia. It was about 1,500 square feet, maybe 2,000. Techno gym equipment, squat racks, dumbbells, the whole shebang, right? And like, I never, I've trained hard, but I've never done strength training. And I was really kind of fortunate, to be honest, like, because one of the top powerlifters in the country, his weight class, trained out of there because it was close for him. It was just very convenient. And at the bottom of the building, there was a famous gymnastics gym with two gymnasts that are like absolutely world class. One of them being Aljaž Pegan. So he was the straddle 5-time world champion, Olympic. We're talking about the best of the best in the world.
Yeah.
Now they mostly train. It was this little shitty gym where they basically were training, but they'd come up here and there and do strength training with weights and stuff like that. So those folks showed me, the game. Yeah. How to bench, how to deadlift, and I didn't even know how good I had it, right? But I was definitely enamored too with some of the guys because they're like, wow, man, like these guys are like jacked and like, they're like, this guy's the best in the world. So I think I took that in. But then I started training. I started strength training at 13.
Yep.
Going on 14. And the thing is, that scrawny kid now, put on some muscle. Now I could touch the backboard. I'm like, whoa, my first step's faster. You get the feedback. You get the feedback loop, right? And then it's like, a year and a half later, now it's really hard to guard me because I'm just stronger than guys, right?
Yep.
And so I can bully them going into the lane. My step back is getting like all the stuff that you want in, because that's all I wanted, right? I want to be a better ball player. I want to be able to dunk it. Right. And so that's how I got enamored by sports performance and strength training, right? Because I got the results, like this shit works. And then I started studying everything. I mean, like, you couldn't get me, in school we had to, in Europe, it's like you have to read, Dostoevsky's Waiting for Godot and write an essay and you're like, oh fuck, I don't want to, I don't want to do that. I don't want to read, right? But
Right.
then it was like, oh, I get to read about training.
Oh yeah.
So by the time I was like, 15, which cool story too, like, later on, like when I started reading Teenage, and that's how I found out about you and Eric Cressy, Neanderthal
Yes.
No More. But I
Yes.
would annihilate. Obsessively every night, 3-4 hours reading.
Yeah.
I'd have all the stuff for Verkhoshansky, Zatsiorsky, Tudor Bapa, like, Mel Sif, everything, right? A Speed
Yeah.
Trap from Charlie Francis, Elite FTS, read through everything. Teenage and read through everything, right? And not only that, like I'd start practice. I buy, do dumb shit like get Air Alert. I don't know if you remember the Air Alert program, or
Yep. Yep.
or the soul, the air soles for vertical jump.
Yes.
Did it all. But really what it was is like I was getting so into this stuff. Now at that point in time, if you ask me like, hey, do you care about being a coach or sports performance coach or any of that stuff, I'd say no. Like my dream's to play in the NBA.
Right.
But to go back to, the book, So Good They Can't Ignore You, where Calvin Cooper also talks about another thing, and it's called deliberate practice and career capital. So when I look back, and, I go to college. In college, I'm kind of like, let me take business management, whatever. I'm going to play ball. But then, I did so many of the electives to basically get a minors in exercise science and kinesiology because I was so geeked out about the body and anatomy and performance and everything else. So I'm building, since I was 13, deliberate practice in the field of sports performance, training, strength training, coaching. And another kind of, I would say, lucky, that's the only thing I can call it, lucky, fortunate, was when I was about 16, 17, I think it was closer to 17 years old. My coach, Boris, that I said was a big influence on me, that's in the second team, he knew this guy named Srdjan Djordjevic, hard name to say, but he was the, probably one of the most elite track coaches in, Eastern Europe. He trained Marilyn Adi her last 6-7 years of her career. Brigitte Bukovec, who's, Olympic silver medalist in 92 on the hurdles. And, I told Boris, I was like, look, man, I'll do anything. Like, I want to dunk it. Like, I want to, like, get faster, this, that, the other. So he goes to, Srdjan, goes like, look, I got this kid. He's kind of nuts. Can he come train? And so he says, yeah, man, he thinks there's no, he's like, yeah, let him come at 6 a.m. before school, right? Thinking like, there's no way I'm showing up. There,
right.
There I am. My ass is there 3 days a week. And he was at the beginning annoyed, at it.
Oh, sure.
But soon he was like, man, this kid works his ass off, asks questions. He's trying to, figure everything out. And by the way, I'm there in the morning training with Brigitte Bukovec. We're talking top 3 in the world for probably a decade, right? In 110 meter hurdles, right? Yeah. And she's showing me foot fire drills and like 10% of your body weight on the sled and like acceleration drills. And I spent a year, I'm going to say a year and a half training, track and field with absolutely elite, I would say, athletes and one of the most elite coaches, right? And I mean, he was doing like, EKG stuff on muscles before anybody was ever doing that stuff, so I had a bit of a back injury already back then. I was like the test, kind of test money. Man, I was learning so much, and not just learning, everything in practice. I was looking at it, seeing it. Boom, end of practice, I go to school. I mean, I was a knucklehead if I went to school, so sometimes I go train some more. But it was, so I say this to say there was this kind of immersion into that world for me, right? And that deliberate practice was really, really being built up. And so, once I got done, to kind of fast forward, because I ended up going through college, my last 2 years, I had a full ride. I ended up going play pro. My first year was in Ukraine, and then it was Slovenia. I played NBA Summer Pro League. Never made it to the NBA and whatnot, but I played on a pretty high level, and it was a very, very difficult decision for me to call it quits. But I can tell you, I can tell you that one of the reasons why I was like, man, I didn't want to be good, in basketball. I was like, man, and it's a rough life, by the way. It's not like what you see always. And, because you train a lot of guys that have played in the league and played in Europe. And then, you got the highest levels in Europe. And I played for Himik, which is, that year won the ULEV Cup. And then you got the lower levels. You got all over the place. And sometimes you don't get paid. You know,
Yeah.
like I've
Yeah.
had periods where I was not paid for 5, 6 months and I'm doing 2-a-days, and that's
Yeah.
actually when I started training people in between, right?
Mm.
I played for a team called Triglo. I had to drive 45 minutes, hour to Kran, train. I'd get my lift session in, I'd drive back home to Ljubljana, and then I'd be coaching people, like in the
Yeah.
gym and in Tivoli Park, and then go back and do it again.
Oh
It
my
was
gosh.
wild, and I was training people for €5 per session. I mean, that's basically free, right?
Oh
Like,
my gosh. Yeah.
uh, but here's the thing, right? I don't want to knock it either because it's when I fell in love with coaching. The feeling that I was getting from training people was, there was something that was non-monetary. And by the way, at that point in time in Slovenia, you couldn't even look at a, trainer and say like that guy's, killing it. But actually,
Right.
so we started Vigor there, and I might be a little bit off here, but about 17 and a half years ago. So the gym Vigor.
Yep.
And at that point in time, there was no personal trainers full time making money, right? So you were
Wow.
either a strength coach for a sports team or an organization, your PE, or that was like personal training was a side hobby. Like in the whole
Yeah.
country, we created Vigor Ground in Slovenia was the first coaching membership gym ever,
Wow.
right? Like we created that genre essentially, right? But I say that to say, I certainly didn't, and I don't think anybody today, gets into it just because it's like I'm going to become filthy rich, right? But
Right.
and then the thing is now you can make significantly better money, and
Absolutely.
yes, you can, but back then, obviously that was not the reason I did it, right? It was the
Yeah.
feeling that it gave me because, like, when I could coach people and see them get better, and people would say like, "Man, thank you, like that's wow, like that's the best session I had. I feel amazing." I see that shit was addictive to me. And,
Yeah.
probably too, there was a period of my life where I felt like I took, when you're in a crime game, a drug game, like, you don't go home and look at yourself in the mirror, at least not in a subconscious way and go like, yeah, like this is really fulfilling because I'm helping people out, so
Right.
I wanted to kind of tip the scales of karma. So that, I share these stories to share that like those points led me to, coaching. And then when I knew I made the decision, I was like, okay, cool. I'm done with ball, which was very different. I mean, I had an identity crisis, and it was pretty bad, but it was like fitness and coaching actually kind of pulled me out of that identity crisis. And I made a, true decision, even before I moved to the US, cause I moved about 9 months after we started a gym, something like that.
Yeah.
And that was tough, right? Cause it was my baby and I started it and like, bam, I got to go again. And I come to America and, I'm at LA fitness training, doing 100-hour weeks in big box gym and the whole shebang. But I did make, a decision, and I know people have heard of that, like in Latin decision, the decease means to cut, right? To cut
Yep.
any other option. And like, I'm a very much so like, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to, be like phenomenal at it. Right. And like I said, in basketball, I was like, man, I have poured my heart and soul into this. Could I have been better? Yeah, but like I would say the limits of the ceiling of my potential and genetic potential and everything else was not that much higher. Of where I was, and I just could not stand going like, oh, I'm going to go through life being good at this thing or pretty good. I mean, and look, compared to the average person, I mean, I made it far. I was a good player.
Absolutely.
I made it I would always say I was a better street ball player than I was a 5-on-5 player.
Yeah.
I was legendary in the streets. I made it to Nike Battlegrounds finals twice. I can hoop one-on-one like crazy. But I was like, I don't want to be good at this thing. I want to be the best, at something in the world. And like coaching, I got that feeling from coaching as far as like, I can do this for forever. I can make this my career.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, awesome answer. Okay. So take us into the early days of Luka as a coach, because here's one thing that I really want to focus on kind of going forward with this show. A lot of the young people that listen to this show see the finished product, right? Mm-hmm. So they see Luka 20 plus years in the game and you're crushing it and you're confident and you know how to coach, you know how to write programs. You can pick up on somebody's little like nuances and how they're feeling the second they walk in the door. But talk to us about early days, Luka, like just getting the feet wet, just getting in the game. what do you remember what it felt like to be a young coach, or like to be, I don't know, were you ever like awkward or like insecure about your ability to coach and work with people?
So I'll tell a little story. And I think, look, it's very, the reason why I mentioned that book and the books that I will mention is not just like, because they hide lessons that I feel are very important, right?
Yep.
When I say deliberate practice and career capital, right? Sometimes somebody will say something like, oh, you're a natural at it. But look, let me explain this, right? When I was 7, we moved to London, right? I actually thought that we were going on a vacation,
Oh, wow.
and then 2 weeks later, my dad drops me off at school and said, hey, I'm going to pick you up at 3:30. This is English school, right?
Yeah.
This is what I know how to say, by the way. My name is Luka. I could point at stuff like, oh, toilet, I'm in English school.
Wow.
And I sit down, this is, how you have these like little traumatic memories and shit. And I'm like, what? Dude, what? And I sit down and the teacher's talking about me because she's saying my name, but I don't know what she's saying. I'm sitting next to a person. We start writing an essay. I know kind of how to write a little bit of English, but I'm just copying everything from the person next to me. I don't know what to do. The person's like, nah, get away. First day I get in like 3 fights. I mean,
wow.
Because it's like people are making fun of me. I know how to speak English. And I was like, oh, and man, it was, I had to adjust. I had to like really, really quickly adjust to stuff, and within 3 months I'm speaking English, right? And after that first, and that first year I was not at the same school as my brother. So I'm like completely solo, right? Yeah. So I've been so we lived there for, 4 years. I kind of become, you're there somewhere for 4 years. You feel like that's your home.
Sure.
Boom. And then we have to go back to Slovenia. This is like literally like war starts. This is right after. I mean, unfortunately, the war in Slovenia was very short. But the effects of, I would say the Balkan War, obviously, were, we had the hyperinflation, insanity, and all that stuff. So we come back. But now I'm a foreigner again in my own country, right? I get made fun of because now I'm from England. So again, I have to adjust. I'm always getting in fights and stuff. My pops is not coming back with us. So I'm like, this is kind of the years where I start becoming a knucklehead. But I got really, really good at adjusting, at reading people, at having to be a chameleon, in a certain sense. And so I looked back at that and I was like, man, so I was developing certain skills doing that. Now, then now I'm playing basketball, and in basketball, guess what? Like you have to, especially as you're developing I ended up becoming team captain later on, leadership, being an example, communicating with your team. I was a very also angry kid. So I had a lot of, temper tantrum explosions and stuff like that again, my coach helped me with. And so I'm developing all these skills. So by the time, I do my first coaching session, and by the way, so this is my brother, Mate, who you know really well, right? Yeah. He was, we were doing all this kettlebell training, like kettlebell training before people knew about kettlebells, right? Yeah. And this guy, Grega Sobochan, who was a pro handball player, showed us the stuff, and I got hooked, and I started studying everything Pavel. And my brother was training 3 guys that were like former soccer guys, some of his friends. And he was like, look, man, I can't really, train him anymore. You want to train him? And I was like, sure, right? And I did a first session, it's all kettlebell, body weight type stuff. And, they went to him and said, hey, look, I don't know what the deal is, but like, he's got it. Like there's something about him when it comes to like, he's got the thing. Like he coaches you well, but then he talks shit, but then he encourages you. He gets the most out of you. And I really enjoyed it. And, that made me realize when, they were telling my brother, like, man, like, I don't know if he's been practicing this or like where this is coming from, but I think it was accumulation of a lot of these skill sets that I built over time, being really into obviously training and sports performance. So, I built that deliberate practice up. It excited me, being put in a lot of these crazy situations, because I went, my first 2 years in junior college was upstate New York. And then I went to Southern Virginia, and I got wild stories from all those places. But again, what it did is it really helped me get good with people, read people, learn about people. And a lot of times, honestly, be silent. I know that it seems like I'm not a person that stays quiet a lot, but in those situations, I actually would be very, very I would be by myself and I'd observe. I was very, very observant because I was also in a lot of situations dangerous situations, and I would say in my teenagers. And I think I built up a skill set. And, the lesson there before I kind of talk a little bit more about the first years of coaching is listen, when you break down anything, or should I say any career path, there's certain skill sets that you have to be phenomenal and great, right?
Yeah.
If you look at coaching, we know communication is one of them. Being a great problem solver, being a great listener and asking great questions, reading body language. Now, those are skills that you have to practice. I just happen to have practiced a lot of those skills in kind of like another life, another world that ended up transferring over to coaching exceptionally well. Yeah. So I definitely started with a little bit more confidence in that area. But I will say, once I started, when I came to the US and training people in a big box gym, and it was like, 1-on-1 and a 30-minute model and an hour model and, all these kind of like constructs that you had to be in. And back then too, it was like, they'd give you these scripts for sales, and I was like, this is dumb. I'd kind of do my own thing. I do my own thing, and I ended up being the most successful, coach and salesperson there. But it was awkward,
Yeah.
But what I did, and like this is by anybody that's listening, I don't know if you work at a big box gym, this doesn't matter. The thing that I would do is like get to know people, right? And big box gyms, I remember, that LA Fitness at that point in time, like 11,000 members. It's probably still something like that. Now, by the way, nowhere near that many showed up. Let's say that 2,000 probably showed up on a consistent basis. But I would go around and like, connect with people and not try to do the whole like, let me show you, It just be like, hey man, what are you working on today? On this, what's your name? Mike. Okay, Luka. Hey, and nothing else. But the next time it comes in, hey Mike, you had legs yesterday. Are you doing upper today? Yeah, I'm doing shoulder. Okay, awesome, man. And now I built some rapport.
Yeah.
Now when I come through and be like, see him like doing this on his shoulder, and I'm like, hey, what's up? What's up, Mike? Oh man, I've been had this shoulder issue. Oh, you mind if I give you some feedback on that overhead press? Right? Yeah, for sure. Right? Then I'd give him a feedback. I'd give him a drill. Again, not pitch him anything, but oh man, that feels better. Actually, that's a good idea. Boom, and I'm moving forward. But now he's like, man, that guy knows his shit.
Right.
But the thing is, I would be doing that like throughout the day with tens and tens and tens of people, throughout the week, hundreds of people, right?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, it's like people are coming in like, hey, Mary, you doing a class, cardio class? Awesome. And the thing is, now all of a sudden, I go to a person that I've built a lot of rapport with and go like, hey, my 6:30 cancel. They actually are paying for your session. Do you want to take a session with me real quick, a 30-minute session? Yeah. What are you working on today? I'll be like, back. All right, cool. Let's do a back workout.
Right.
I put them through a back workout. They're just like, my God, this is the best back workout I've ever done. That doesn't hurt. You coached the hell out of me. Then they go like, how much would it be to get XYZ sessions with you? Right? Done deal. So again, it comes back to, we didn't talk about the X's and O's of training, which, again, and you know me, man, I'm as geeky as it gets when it comes to training stuff, but it was all about the communication part. And that was uncomfortable for me. For example, sales were definitely uncomfortable for me, right? And I think sales were uncomfortable for me more so too because of my relationship with money. I grew up in socialism, so asking for certain amounts of money that to me, and I just mentioned, I was charging €5 and eventually €10 in Slovenia for training sessions, right? Like, and now, you're in America, and I mean, this is a long time ago, but still, you're I don't know, your one-on-ones are 70, or $60, $70. And I was, you're selling multi-$1,000 packages, right? For the year. And it was like, I had to, really overcome that. And by the way, I started reading everything from, Zig Ziglar books and sales stuff and, really trying to kind of rewire my brain on, cause I was like, man, I can't, I can't suck at this. I quickly realized, and by the way, in LA Fitness is like, everything is, I could talk shit about it, but the truth is like spending, a lot of time doing sales, coaching people, figuring out all the managerial stuff there helped because there was always quotas. This is where you hit your bonus. I became a weekend manager for about 5 to 6 months. They shipped me off to another LA Fitness because I was doing well, and they put me somewhere that it sucked, which was horrible, federal way. So I had to drive, and this is what they do. Then they'll be like, well, once you hit this number, you can come back here. And if they give you this impossible number, like And I
Yeah.
hit it because I was so pissed off, but because I really wanted to come back to rent it. But it was, what it did is it did push me, because I
Yeah.
was like, man, I don't want to drive the Federal Way every day. Like, this place is horrible. So I like pushed like crazy to hit this number, and, did more sales appointments, more talks to people, studied sales more, got more no's. But again, what was I doing? I was building skill sets through deliberate practice every day, right?
Yep.
And I think this is an important thing about, like, I could give you another 10 different scenarios of like being very uncomfortable, first time training group, like larger groups,
Yes.
and you're like, Jesus Christ, but I would, the way that I would always deal with that, the way that I still deal with it now is like obsessive preparation.
Yeah.
Right?
That's great advice.
And,
Yeah.
I remember when I started my first boot camp, it was my first garage gym here, which is now 15 plus years ago. And basically, the whole week, I would like outline, okay, if there's this many people that show up, because I launched it with 2 weeks free, everybody I knew, and I didn't know how many people show up. And it was like, there was 18 people that showed up, but I was prepping like, okay, what if it's 20 something? What if it's 10?
Right.
Like for days. And then day one, by the way, this was like a 5:30 class. I'm there at like 4:45, tripping
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And basically it's like, I'm thinking and visualizing everything through. And probably the first 3 months, I'm there like excessively early. And then once I was like, oh, actually this is going good, I prepped for it good. Now I started being more comfortable with it. Right.
Yep.
But every single thing, even to this day, sometimes like I had like one time we would do like when I have off season NFL stuff, and I have like 3, 4, 5 guys in the off season, but then the closer it gets to, like, for instance, OTAs, other people fly into town, and then the guys are like, oh man, like train with this guy Luka, and like he does this mobility. I would do like these mobility Fridays or Saturdays, right?
Yep.
And then one time it's like, we had 11 guys come through, right? And it was just like, hey, can my buddy come? Can my buddy come? Can my buddy come? So I'm like, I knew there was going to be more people. Didn't know how many more. Man, I am orchestrating this thing, meaning like I'm planning exactly what I'm going to do, how I'm going to do it, days ahead, writing it all out, running it through my head, timing, like how much longer do we do this? How long do we do this? So by the time it's there, I'm still might sometimes be a little bit nervous, but like I've already prepped it and I feel very confident, right? Because the more that you prepare, the more confident you be. Like, you put the time in. So, presentations, even though like I've done hundreds of presentations now, like I got a nutrition seminar here on Saturday at Vigor. Still, I started building the prezo, this weekend, and I do sticky notes and I run it through because I want the shit to be fire. So like, I'm going to prepare, and it doesn't, I had this formula that I talk about, right? Like, how do you build confidence? And it's like 2 to 3 different things. I think it's competence. Right. So if you're competent, the more competent you become at the thing, the more confident you'll be.
Yep.
Preparation, because again, the more you prepare, the more confident you'll be, and encourage. Like, you got to lean into the hard thing. Like, there's just no way around that shit. Right. But if you have competence, preparation, you have courage to lean into hard stuff, your confidence will continue to grow.
Yeah.
And what I see a lack of these days is like, not enough deliberate practice, not enough preparation, right?
Yes.
And what you can get into trouble of doing, by the way, is this. And there's do you know Craig Weller?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this is actually a story from Craig Weller, and I can't remember where. I think we might have been at 212 when he told this story, but I heard him write about it too. And he talked about surfing, right? Because you got a lot of coaches that are like, well, I've been doing this for a long time, right?
Yeah.
But Craig Weller was surfing for many years, and he got like okay, he was okay at it. Kind of was like, I don't know how I'm not getting better. And then he went to surf camp, for a week. And in surf camp, he basically like was like, I improved 10 times more in 7 days than I did in 7 years, because I was doing dumb stuff and I was just practicing the wrong thing. So I got really good at the wrong thing, right? I got really good at, so to me, for example, right? Hey, I've been doing personal training for XYZ amount of time, but it might be like, you're not a good communicator, or you cut into people's sentences. You talk more than you listen. And you kept doing that for 7 years, and now you're really good at the shitty thing. So,
yeah,
and I think that's that's why it's important to, have, I think we talked about this before. You got to collect role models, right? And hunt for skill sets. And the role model is like, man, that guy's such a great coach. What does he do? And look, by the way, ask them, right? Listen to a podcast, listen to a show, buy the book, get the course, and so that you can practice the skill set that they've developed to be great. So you're now like, oh, okay, they're great, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's like a very, very important factor. And hopefully that answered the question in a little bit more lengthier manner, but that gives people value, I guess.
Absolutely. So one thing I really want to hear from you, and I feel like I kind of know this, but I would love to hear it, like your words, your mouth. I love to know about people's philosophy, right? And how they cultivated their philosophy. So I would love to hear, just give us the elevator pitch. Obviously you can tease it out and extend it out for us, but like somebody new comes to you and they're like, Luka, I've heard great things and your gym is awesome. And man, I want to go get an acai bowl at Fit Bar when I'm done. But what makes you different? How is Vigor different from everybody else? Hit me with that.
That'll make me think a little bit. I mean, listen, this will sound corny, but if you go to the website, there's a tagline on there, right?
Yeah.
And I truly do believe in this so much. It took me a really long time to like figure this out. Even just through, I did a lot of Donald Miller stuff, which is he does a lot of Marketing Made Simple and Story Brand, right? He's the man behind that. But it says, we help our clients change their bodies so they can change the stories to their life, right? And at the end of the day, by the way, right? Any person and here's why: how wide the audience that we train is crazy, right? It'll be the most elite athletes, but then it'll be, a person with a serious injury, plates in his spine. Then it'll be a teacher. Then it'll be a 55-year-old guy that wants to get back to semi-pro soccer. Then there's, the 24-year-old kid that wants to get jacked. I mean, 100 examples, right? Yeah. But all that every one of them is doing, right? They're trying to change their body, and then underlyingly also their, obviously their health, fitness, performance, so they can change their story. And their story might be, I don't look good. I'm not confident. I don't have great energy. Like, I'm not a role model for my kids. Man, they think I'm washed out, but I still got 3 years in the league. They tell me that I can't get a scholarship. Look, that's my story, right? Like, I can't get a scholarship in college. I can't be pro, right? And you're trying to change that story, right? And again, there's a lot of different stories, but the body is this, I think because we're in fitness, and I hope that everybody believes that, like, you got this one flesh vehicle, that takes us through life on this, on this meteor that's flying through fucking space, right? Like, and it's like this is our vessel of expression of who we are. And I think it's, body and mind can't be disconnected. So just body, but really, really train people mentally. And I think that, what we do exceptionally well is like bring the puzzle pieces together. And like, I remember this is a while ago, I never had a niche. Right? How it's like, this guy's this guy, this guy's that guy, people go like, hey, what are you? And I could never really truly answer the question. I'm like, man, I'm a coach, right? And on one show, and I can't remember which show I was on, I said, look, here's what I believe that I do exceptionally well. Like, I'll go and study speed from the best people on the planet, right? And I'll never be as good at that thing as they are. But let's say that like 75, 80%. Yeah. Right. Because I'm going to go through every course. I'm going to go to internships. I'm going to go hands-on. I'm going to do the thing. Then I'm going to go to the nutrition realm and like do PN level 1, level 2, do this cert, do that cert, hang out with JB, who thankfully is a close friend of mine. Right. And man, I'm going to learn as much as I can. Right. Then I'm going to go here and learn about hypertrophy and building muscle. And then I'm going to go here and learn about sports. Then I'm going to go to Alex Natera and learn about isometrics and do every one of his courses. And we're going to fly him out to Slovenia. And like, I mean, obsessive, obviously, right?
Yeah.
But I'll never be, I'm going to learn about glute training. What's the best to build big booties from Brett Contreras and this guy and that guy, right? Like, and I'll never be 100% of their knowledge or experience, but I'm going to get it like really far up there.
Yep.
But what I'm the best at is putting all those puzzle pieces together. And
yes. Yeah.
And the thing is like when I also realized that like there's no one human being. When I see people, and I've now coached, I mean, real number, by the way, like over 4,000 people in some form or another.
Yeah.
Groups, teams, this, that, the other, right? Like, and that's in person.
Yep.
Online is a whole nother story. But now one person would go like, Luka, I just want to get as jacked as fucking humanly possible. And be like, oh, cool. So you want to be as jacked as possible. You don't give a fuck about your mobility is good, your fitness is good. Well, no. I also want to be strong and I want to move on. I want my back to hurt. And I want, right? Like,
yeah.
So it's like, our body is a culmination, right? Like of, a lot of different things. We look at lifestyle, we look at sleep, we look at stress, we look at nutrition, we look at supplementation. Then, by the way, I would say like I always give homage to you for me, the filter I look at training through is R7, because to me that's kind of like the lens of, hey, is this a great workout? And I know everybody's heard about R7, but it's like, okay, release. Are we doing resets? Are we doing soft tissue work? Are we doing I believe, this is, I think, something that I've been riffing on for a decade now, right? Like, no matter who I train, you're going to do some explosive stuff. You're going to build elasticity, power, explosiveness.
Yeah.
So that's the R in the reactive. And then you got your resilience, which I really like the idea of, I heard this from Cosgrove, way long ago. There's like, I split that up into strength training and resistance training, right? So strength training to me is like actually neural drive, like the lower rep ranges. Let's get stronger. Resistance training is like build muscle, right? Hypertrophy and everything else kind of falls under that bucket. Then we got our conditioning, and again, like all of those matter.
Yeah,
now,
absolutely.
It's a piece of the pie. That's what I loved about R7, right? That I would always explain it and go, I know Mike Ball, says like fill empty buckets. I kind of like that idea, but but it's like I look at fill empty buckets and also give people what they want. So, if a person comes in, I don't know. So let's take one extreme. I got an NFL player and we might do, some VBT tests and be like, hey, like your speed strength sucks, right? Like there's a big opportunity for you here. You're not really good at absorbing force, and now, this well too. I mean, in Slovenia, we do a ton of these tests, but you have valves so you can, force plates are telling you, I mean, right now, actually right there on the table, I got a new offensive lineman that just came in and just brought me the reports,
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the reports and I read the reports and I'm like, oh, okay, I know what we need to work on. He doesn't, right? I'm like, oh man, like, okay, cool. We got to work on this, right? So then when I'm doing a training session, like this is improving, those numbers that you're below the average in the NFL, we're going to bring that up, right?
Yep.
So we're going to keep your strengths high. So we're going to do less of that because you're already strong, right? But hey, your hamstrings are shit, right? Because I see here. So we're going to work on that, right? We're going to fill these different buckets. Now, it might also be a lot of the guys that I see, the aerobic capacity shit. So then I explain that. Listen, guys, you're going to come in for 2-3 days of zone 2 work, but it's going to be more specific in movement patterns and whatnot. Like, here's what we're going to do, right? So it gives me, like, I have this piece of the pie that's R7, right? And we're going to chuck out slices in a manner that's going to help them become, the best that they can be and give them what they want. But sometimes I'm going to sneak in, shit that they need that maybe they don't necessarily tell me. Like, oh, dude, I really want to work on internal rotation of the hip. Like, don't care. We're going to do that. It's going to make you better.
Right.
And once you explain it to them and show it to them, they buy in. Now you go to, for example, I'll get folks that are like, I do a ton of cardio. And it's like, well, we're going to do less of that now, right? We're going to do strength training, right? But they tell me I want to build lean muscle, do this, that, want to get leaner, whatever. And it's like, oh, well, here's all these things that we can now add in here. They're going to help you do that. But I still like cardio. No worries. We'll still do cardio, right? But we're going to chop the pieces of the pies a little differently. So that, that's the philosophy on that aspect. But really there's kind of 4, and people are good at remembering simple things, right?
Yep.
So to me, it's like there's training, there's nutrition, there's recovery, there's mindset. Those are the 4, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And by the way, like, don't care who comes in. we're going to address those in some way or another. Now, sometimes the mindset is a tough one to, you can't go to somebody like, well, your mindset sucks, right? as a coach, what you're doing is you're always putting in seeds, and those seeds should develop over time a different belief system and or break their current one, right? And then for an example, and I'll take somebody that struggled with weight loss, and their story is always, well, my family was big and genetics, and that's why, it's genetics, right? Now, the reason why that's important is because a belief drives your behaviors. So if me and Mike are having a conversation going like, Mike, let's get really into math. And Mike's like, dude, my family's never been good at math. I'm kind of done with math, He's not going to go study math because he believes he's not good at math, right? Yeah. And he believes he can't get better at math. Like somebody is like, hey, it's my genetics. I really can't, get the same results as that person, right?
Yep.
Now, it might be more challenging, but they can. So it's like part of mindset is helping people, restructure their beliefs. And folks will be like, what do you mean? Well, look, what is mindset? Mindset is actually just a series of beliefs. So all your beliefs put together are your mindset, right?
Yep.
And great coaches, little by little, ask questions sometimes that help people, what I call trip over their own truth, figure shit out by themselves, which is more, I would say, ideal than you telling them, right? If you tell them, it doesn't work that much. So it's like you try to get them there, which I highly recommend, by the way, everybody go through motivational interviewing, which is a phenomenal book. It's obviously in social work, you have to go through it. You have to go through the courses. I've done, I went through the book, went through the courses, went through the whole shebang. But if you want something more specific to fitness, there's a book called Motivational Interviewing in Nutrition and Fitness. Very applicable. Yeah. Everybody should buy it, right? Because it helps you talk to people in a more understanding way. By the way, there's a whole construct of how you go through this. Like it would take me, I could dive into this, but just get a book and look it up. But here's my point. Like, so, if you take, because motivational interviewing was first created to help basically guide addictions, right? So if you're telling an addict, like you're an addict, they're going to stand their ground and be like, what are you talking about? I'm not an addict, right? So you can't approach it that way. So there's a different way of communication you have to do. There's understanding, and then there's questions, and then you're looking for change talk, right? Where you'd be like, well, Luka, it's, I can't do more YouTube videos. I got kids, I got this, that, and the other. I say, hey, Mike, absolutely. Hey, you're going through, you got a crazy busy day, man. Like it's actually pretty incredible how you can achieve all the things that you do in such a busy day. And, not doing more YouTube videos, I can completely understand that right now is, not a good time for you to grow your business through YouTube. And then you go like, well, but it's really something that I want to do. Boom. See that? So that's change talk, right?
Yeah.
So, but the thing is learning, by the way, we talked about skill sets and practice, right? I've got, I bought every workbook there is for motivational interviewing, and there's a lot of them, by the way, and I would fill it out, and the next day I'd go and talk to a client and I'd go through a specific kind of construct and I'd practice that like 4, 5, 6 times that day and be like, ooh, wow, like that really did work. I got no pushback, right? Where before it would be like, well, what you're doing is, and nobody wants to be told, right? Like what they're doing wrong, right? They want to be heard. They want to be understood. And then sometimes we're like, I completely understand if right now is not a, good time for you to lose weight in the next, 2 to 3 months. And then they go like, yeah, it is a challenging time, but you know what? Like, I feel like this is really important for me. Boom. And now we open the door. Well, tell me a little bit more about that. How do you see, right? Like, and then we can go more into these coaching conversations. So that mindset piece, like it's not, by the way, I got nothing against that. I'm a person that will put stuff on the TV that's motivational and like, hoorah. But it's not just like, who's going to carry the boats, and the logs, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a time and a place for that. There's a person for that, but you gotta increase your coaching toolbox, right? Yeah. And that's literally the way that I look at it. Like to this day, every day I'm studying shit because I want my coaching toolbox to be deeper and deeper and deeper so that when I find a weird screw, to have to unscrew and screw, I got the tool that doesn't. And not the only thing that I have is a fucking hammer. And all I can do is like, let's go, And by the way, I do that a lot, and there's a time and a place for that. And it's, one-on-one training versus semi-private training versus small group training versus large group training have different, approaches to even coaching.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
And so it really is, by the way, and this is why I love this shit, right? Because I feel dumber than I've ever felt. And like, I know more than I've ever known. I know a lot of stuff that maybe I forgot more than people know, but I feel dumb, right?
Yeah.
And I want to continue to develop this craft. And when it's almost like disrespectful, at least to me, when people are like, oh yeah, training, coaching, whatever. It's like, there's so many levels to this shit.
Yeah.
And if you're incredible at it, man, it is, you can help so many people in so many different ways. And that's what fires me up, that like, as long as I've been doing this, I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. And that's what I loved about, like basketball. I probably, if I would have, been phenomenal for a long time, I would have probably retired, 3 to 4, 5 years ago. And that's if I would have had an incredibly long career, right?
Right.
There's a ceiling, like there's injuries.
Absolutely.
There's a time.
There's a shelf life.
There's a shelf life, period. Like, what's the shelf life to coaching? Tell me. Like, there is.
No, I ask myself that all the time, dude.
Correct. Like to the day I die.
Know.
And it's like, I hate, by the way, I hate this, right? People go like, oh, what? So you're going to be in your 50s and training people? Like, imagine asking that question to an accountant.
I know.
Oh, so you're in your 50s and like doing accounting? Dude, like this is like, I hope and wish that, more and more people would take this, vocation. I don't even want to say profession, vocation, because the thing is, if you take it seriously, like don't take yourself seriously. That's one of my rules, but take coaching very, very seriously. Like, you can be phenomenal, help more people get so much purpose and meaning from this work, make really good money, right? Those days of like, you're not making good money. But again, you got to put in the work, right? And like, we need more people like that, right?
Yep.
And again, like, that's what got me into it, was I'm so fulfilled by what I do. And, some of this, like, gyms are like top 3 hardest businesses in the world, I think.
Yeah.
Restaurants are definitely first, but like, and there's days, man, I'm like, whew, I need a week nap, but it's so fulfilling, man. I do get up every morning and like, I have gusto with what I do. And listen, I know that I veered off here a little bit, but like, it really is when you look at those 4 buckets, to keep it simple, you got to continue, I think, to dive deeper into learning skill sets to build your toolbox in each one of those buckets.
Yep.
And maybe you're this is how it was for me. I'm sure how it was for you. The first part of my life in the coaching career was like training. Like, I will devour any and everything about training to the level of like like insanity, right?
Yep.
And then it was like, oh, nutrition, right? Then it became, then I started, to be honest, like where I really started diving into the psychology of things was my own life. I went through, I was a shithead. I went through a divorce. I did dumb things in my life. I burned things to the ground that were important to me. And, I went into therapy. I went to Wake Up Warrior program. I was like, why do people do stupid things? Right.
Yeah.
And I started studying that like obsessively. And it was the best thing. I mean, looking back for coaching, like that very, very, very painful part of my life became really a catalyst to me becoming a much better coach, more empathetic, more understanding, more compassionate. But actually, I started studying psychology and neurology. And again, like I was in therapy for like, personally for 2 years. I was in Wake Up Warrior program for 4 years. I did, Byron Katie's work, by the way, not just like the book, the courses. I did, Shadow Coach from Debbie Ford. I read everything. I went through, I could go down the list of every single thing. I spent absurd amounts of money and time studying this stuff because I wanted to figure myself out, but in the process, actually figured out how to better coach people.
Yeah.
Right. And you just got to keep going down those buckets, because maybe you know so much about training, but you're like, I'm not having the results that, people aren't staying around. My retention's not great. I get great results with 20% of the people, but like 30 is okay. 50 don't get results. You might have to go into the bucket of mindset and nutrition, recovery, right? Like, we've both been, I've been close friends. With you, like for 15 years, with Joel for 14, 15 years.
Yep.
So that's kind of been I always say I'm very, very grateful to have been around and stand on the shoulder of giants. And like, you spend 15 years with Joel, guess what? I'm really fucking good at conditioning. Right?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I can run his seminars because like I went through his course now like 4 times online. I've,
Yeah.
been live with him. I don't know how many times, like, we talk about this shit all day long. So, you got to figure out, maybe look, this will be a good analogy that I just figured out, but like we talked about R7 and filling buckets, right?
Yep.
I think that like in training, especially if you've been a trainer for, a certain period of time, you got to figure out which buckets you got to fill. Maybe your training knowledge bucket is like, is really pretty damn full. I mean, not like you can't get better, but your nutrition bucket is empty. Your mindset bucket is like 20% full. And if you kind of fill those buckets up, you'd become a much, much more effective coach and a better coach for your clients. And that's always kind of like the challenge, right? Like for me, as I grow and I always try to say there's coaching and there's the business of coaching, right? And for me, like I also dove really deep into the business of coaching, and I have 4 businesses and shit's hard, and you gotta, you can't, it's like you can be great at coaching, but if you don't understand the one-on-one of business operations, profit and loss, marketing, sales, system, fulfillment, hiring, firing, leadership, like, you're going to have a tough time. And so there's just always filling buckets. And like my life is, kind of like, all right, let's maintain these buckets. I'm going to dive deep in the next, quarter and really like get more out of this bucket. And also, by the way, be good at like, by the way, I'm not going to fill the physical therapy bucket. I'm going to refer, I'm not going to fill the like back pain specialist doctor bucket. I'm going to refer. So also I realized I'm, not the greatest at managing. I'm really good at leadership, but I'm not great at managing. Okay. Who's going to help me there? Right. So there's also this phase of your life where it's going to be like, who, not how, which is a short, cool little book from Dan Sullivan. And that's a 2024 is a lot of that for me, right? It's like dive deeper into my genius, study more of the things I want to continue to be great at, and like let go of the shit that's not my genius, and have who's that fill that bucket because they're way better than me at that thing. So a little rant there, man, but I feel like those things are important though.
I love it. And this actually leads into a question that I really wanted to ask you, because I think you and I are very similar in the sense that I describe us as synthesizers, right? Like neither one of us, I'm not Lee Taft, right? I'm not Joel Jameson. I'm not Bill Hartman. I don't think like those guys, but like you, we synthesize, right? I'm going to go learn 80 to 90% of this and this and this, and then I'm going to put it all together into my thing. So talk to me about how you do that. How do you go from that stage of this is a weakness, right? I've identified, let's call it speed training. Speed training is a weakness. I'm going to dive in, take everything. I'm going to make it my own. How do you do that?
I'll actually give you, and I didn't write this out, so I'm kind of going off the top of my head a little bit, but this process. So for example, right, let's say, which I have in the last kind of 6 months, I've dove a little bit deeper into this, right? And let's say I'm like, man, I'm good at this stuff, but I want to take this up a notch, right? Yeah. And so I'm going to identify the people first that I'm like, who are the best people in this field, right? Or that I want to learn from. And it's like, well, okay, we got Altus. Okay, bought that resource, went through it. Let me go through this again. Let me start. So then I'm like, let me put a note in that like one day a week, I'm going through Stu McMillan stuff. I'm going through Altus stuff. I'm going through Les Spellman stuff. JT Perform, like, so there's a bunch of guys that are like, I just like how they deliver information. I mean, obviously Altus on speed training is like the best, right? But like for instance, Lee Taft, and I got all Lee stuff. Actually, it's like some of the stuff is like going back through it. Some of it is like new stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Then when I study it, so cause I have this blocked out, I'm going to study, by the way, if I can go to a live thing, I'm going to a live thing.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
If it's
1,000%.
So I'm looking, which kind of, this is kind of like my cheat code. I call those people and bring them in. Like we brought Derek Hansen in, right? Derek is in Vancouver, so I talk to him a lot about speed stuff. And but like I'm, hey Derek, can you come down here and do an event? Awesome, great, right? We're trying to get Les in now too. Les Spellman in, but the point is, hands-on is the best. So let me just frame that, okay?
Yeah.
But I'm going to study that, whether it's through I think if you have enough understanding, you can learn through shorter stuff, YouTube, IG clips. I don't think it's the best, to be honest with you, but I do feel like if you have a good principle-based understanding, you can learn stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I tend to go into a course, go into a thing. And then I start writing notes, right? On one, lessons, but two, application. So for instance, acceleration drills, force production. And then I look at it like, okay, cool. Is this stuff that I can do? Do we have a valve right now or a Hawkins dynamics? No, we don't. Okay. So this is out the window. So what are the things that I can, but I do have an output. Okay, cool. So we can measure this. And then I will like learn and take notes, and this will be like 2 hours. Like I kind of like to block out pretty deep periods
good chunks
of study time. And then I'm first going to do it myself, right? I'm going in, I'm doing the drills, I'm filming myself with the drills. I actually like to teach it before I even do it with clients, because what it's doing is it's like really clearing it up for myself. I always say that like content, when done well, is a great opportunity and filter for you to teach better. Like if I'm like, hey, cool, give me a 3-minute video on this thing that you learned, explain it in a simple way to a 6-year-old. Boom, I got to practice that now, right? Write an article, write a mini IG blog post about it, right? So or I'll shoot a podcast on it. So I'm going to, first of all, learn, then I'm going to synthesize what I learned, so organize it. Then I'm going to teach it, and I'm going to do it myself. From there, I'm going to have a pretty good grasp on this stuff, right? I'm like, I've wrestled with it myself. Nobody else is around. Like, boom. Now it's like, okay, tomorrow I got 3 NFL guys coming in. We're not gonna just do a full blown fucking acceleration, speed training session and throw everything out the window. No, like what we're gonna do is we're gonna take 2 to 3 drills, concepts, and we're gonna do them after our dynamic warm ups, like maybe in place of something or added on to what we're already gonna do. Now I'm already coaching it. I'm getting my reps in. I'm getting feedback from it. Then I take that, because I love this idea, is that like, I'm gonna teach it to everybody. So now I do my small group. It's my Thursday, 6 p.m. small group. And it's like, hey guys, listen, part of our dynamic warm-ups today, we're going to do some running drills, right? Just going to add 2 to 3, I don't want to add too many and people feel like they can't do stuff. But guess what? Now I got like, okay, we got Ann, she's 72. Linda, 62. Okay, that person's had a bum knee. And now I got a class of 17. And guess what? I have to coach, right, and adjust for those folks on this stuff that I learned. Now, of course, I'm going to pick and choose. We're not going to go like, all right, guys, we're going to do running 40s, right? Like I'm going to take some of the running drills. I might do some acceleration drills that I know nobody's going to get hurt, right? And now I'm coaching it. So by the end of the week, so if I'm studying this on Sunday, by the next Sunday, I'm going to get like probably 100 reps in between myself, groups, semi-privates, some one-on-one elite athletes that I got, and I'm like rolling, right? But my understanding within that week is like, boom, okay? And now it's like, I'll keep stuff that's good, I'll keep it. By the way, there's plenty of times that I've did a thing in like a group setting or something, and I'm like, nope, we're not going to use that again. Not it. It's like, I get how, like, I'm like, hey, I might use that in a one-on-one setting. I got way more time, way more breakdown. This is not going to work. And I take, this is another thing that Alan Cosgrove taught me a long time ago. I went about 4 years doing this, right? I don't do it every day now, but I would, he said, look, at the end of the day, write out, like notes, reflect on the training, what went well, what didn't go well, what would you change? And I got like journals of, this stuff, right? Filled out. I had it for years, and it got me to really, what it helped me do is really kind of create my philosophy and principles and understanding, right? Like I would hear stuff and then I try it with groups and be like, dude, this person's never trained groups. Cause I know like this does not work, right? Especially in this setting. And so now I still do the same thing. I just don't do it every day. But like, let's say if I'm diving into like acceleration or multi-directional speed, I'm now taking notes on that week. I'm like, this drill's great. This drill's great. I figured out an adjustment for this drill because a lot of people can't do it. So this is my regression or lateralization. And now, it's like I'm very, like within a week, I'm pretty confident about applying some of these things now. Right. And here's what happens too. and this is important, there's a feedback loop to it, right? Competence, right? So, again, going back to that self-determination theory, I'm better at the thing now. So I'm getting more fired up now.
Yeah.
Right. So now I might go like 4, 5, 6 Sundays in a row, studying that. And like 2 months later, I'm like, yo, I've like really improved and developed. Now, I think if you're a newbie, this is a little bit harder because you got to spend more time with it and wrestle with it. Right.
Yeah, for sure.
I've done so much of it that now it's like, stacking on top of that knowledge is a little bit easier. But here's the thing. The process is the same. What I would say is like, you're just going to need a lot more reps. Right. Yep. And by the way, have, the power of this. I cannot say it enough. So for example, if me and you are in training and there's certain things that like I feel like one of the top people in the world at, and I feel like I'm really good at it, but you're there with me, right? And we're doing stuff. And I'm like, Mike, what'd you see? And you're coaching me through it, right? And I spend as much time with you. Imagine that feedback loop, right?
Oh,
we
absolutely.
talked about Craig Weller's story, right? Like if somebody doesn't check you, that's better than you, that's great, great at this thing, you might be doing it shitty for 2 months before they check you. And then you're like, oh my God, I got 2,000 reps in a crappy way. But if I'm with you a lot and you're like, you coach me up a bunch and you're like, yep, Luka, that's excellent. That rep was excellent. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. While you're here, let's do a lot of this. Let's do a lot of this. Boom, my feedback loop now on like day one, that's why hands-on is so good. That's why in-person seminars are so good, because now you're leaving with an excellent rep that that you can now go practice. And by the way, this could be sales, marketing. I don't give a shit. Like it's principle based, right?
Yep.
And this is what the mistake that I see is like you took a course online, you didn't even do a lot of reps, but you're like, yeah. And I hear this a lot. Oh yeah, I know. To know and not to do is not to know. And also to know and not to do repetitively in an excellent manner is not to know. Right? So that's what the power of that lies. And that's why like sometimes, and my brother Mate's been to all the Altus, mentorships. I think he's done he just finished like level 3. But, he was in Arizona for 7-8 days. And it's like Stu's, Dan are looking at you and like, I've been to their spot in Arizona before they moved to Atlanta with JB. We're hanging out with Stu a lot. And like, man, it's insane what they're doing. Like, I mean, Stu's like looking and he's like, do a little adjustment on the calcaneus, and it's like he goes and he adjusts the calcaneus on the table and he's like back. I mean, these guys are seeing micro movements, right? Yeah. But that's an extreme. But you know what? When you're around, so when Tay went out there and he was like, I thought I knew a lot about speed training. And then you're like, Jesus, holy shit, like this is insane. This is a whole nother level, but that's the thing is if you really want to be phenomenal at this stuff, that's what you got to do. Go immerse yourself around the best, and like the way your perspective on how you look at stuff is going to change, right? And because that's what I hate about like, when people are just like, oh, it's just rep counting and workouts and man, you got to go to the highest levels, and then that will melt your brain. It'll make you excited about, if you love this stuff, it'll make you excited about what who you can become. Because I feel like we're a mix of like coaching, look, every day I see people and we get opportunity and the honor of being able to help people get better, right? Yeah. Every single damn day. And, you kind of are a mix of, an exercise scientist and a nutrition coach and guide and like a lifestyle person and like fucking Tony Robbins, you know what I mean? Like if you're doing it right, like, I mean, seriously, like when, if you filmed me throughout the day, you'd be like, I don't know, this guy's telling a story, somebody's crying, holy shit, is he pastor at church? I don't, but I feel like, look, our goal is to help people move forward, to move better, to feel better, to perform better, to be healthier. And we do that through different ways and different mechanisms. And, you keep, again, building that toolbox, build the toolbox of storytelling, Thankfully, I've known Martin for like 18 years, Yeah. And I've traveled the world with him, doing presentations with him, TFW1 for I don't know how many years. And it's like, man, I rubbed off to me. I started, learning how to storytell and writing out stories every day before I go to class. And I have it on 4x6 card. Like these are all parts of being a phenomenal coach, and it never ends. And that's exciting,
Yeah.
right? That's
absolutely.
not like frustrating. That's exciting. Like it's the infinite game. Simon Sinek,
Yes.
man,
Yes.
and so yeah, like, man, you get me fired up. Come on, man.
Okay. I got one more, and I'm excited to hear your advice on this. So what I want, and I hate these questions, sort of like, give me one, exercise, one tip, but like, okay, young coach comes to you and they're like, Luka, you've been spitting fire for an hour now. Like, I'm so fired up. I want to be great. Where do I start? What's like one or two pieces of advice for the young coach getting started today, wants to be great? What do you tell them?
I mean, like, be around greatness, man. You have to be like you've
Well,
probably
there's the
heard
live
this
event thing, right? There's the live event thing. Like, if you're
yeah.
willing to go out of your comfort zone and be around people that are, presenting to others, that alone right there is a huge step in the right direction.
But even more, like, watch, who's the best trainer in your area? You know what I mean? Like, a person that you could look at and go like, man, if I could be like him, right?
Yeah.
Go buy sessions, right? And
Yeah.
I can only afford 2. Get 2.
Yeah.
Hustle, get another 2 in another month or 2 months, right? Because you're getting it, right? You're getting that greatness. You're getting that excellence. And like, by the way, there's a lot of great trainers, right? And maybe one is like better technically and another one's incredible with people. Be around them. Take notes. Again, do internships. Like, it's so like it's become harder. Like, look, I'm just telling you the truth. We've both been in the game for a long time, right? And like,
Yeah.
there's less people willing to do work for free in internships. By the way, like, I've gone into commercial real estate. I own this building that I'm in, right? Like, I was doing free work, learning how to do commercial real estate from people that were 1,000 times better than me.
Yeah.
Right. But I was established and successful. Does that make sense? Like, today, if the best guy in Seattle calls me up and they're like a multi-billionaire commercial real estate mogul and they go like, Luka, I need 15 to 20 hours a week from you for free. I'll teach you everything I know. Dude, before he finishes the sentence, I'm in.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
right.
And you might be like, where are you going to find the time? Fucking, I'll find the time, because guess what? I believe I'm stealing from him. You understand? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
This is, if you ever heard that Charlie Munger story, right? There was Charlie Munger went to a mentor. He said, look, I'll work for you for free. And initially his mentor said, you know what he said? He said, sorry, that's too expensive. And people were like, hold up, what do you mean? Because he said, me walking around with you and telling all this stuff, like, it's not free. It's taking my time, and that's too expensive. Now, Charlie Munger continued to bug him and actually ended up becoming, working for him and being his mentor and kept teaching him a lot. But I'm saying this for every youngin that's listening to this show, or when I say youngin, it doesn't matter. Like, if you're in the first 2, 3, 4, 5 years of your career, to be honest with you, any point in time in your career, if you want to get better, to have this idea of like, man, I'd never work for free. It's like, it's not, you're actually receiving so much, like, you're receiving the thing that nobody can take away from you.
Yeah.
Right? No one, right? So it's like, if I learn that example from the guy that's the best in commercial real estate, and I go 20 hours per week for free, so 1,000 hours in a year, right? 50 weeks in a year. Like, and for anybody to not really see that, like, they're like, oh my God, like, you worked all that time for free. It's like, no, that person gave me billions of dollars worth of knowledge. Now it's up to me to do something with it. But the reality is like, that is a game changer. You understand? Like, and so maybe, again, how much time do you have? Like, I don't know. But my point being, maybe it's an hour a day, maybe it's 2 per day, maybe it's 5 per week, 1 day. Like, immerse yourself around greatness, because it does, we are so, like, we're tribal people. We will adhere to the standards of the tribe. Change your tribe if you need to, meaning, like, get around people that you want to inspire to be like, because you'll see how they operate. And that, by the way, nobody has to tell you, right? Like, we're talking about motivation interviewing. When you get around people and then you go like, damn, that's how they operate. That's how they operate. This is how I operate.
Yeah.
Boom, light bulb, right? And that's why I tell people, I'm like, look, like, you want to see like what it takes? Be around me, right? But get up with me. and see like, hey, I'm going to, from 7 a.m. sometimes I might go to 11 a.m. straight. Now it might be like, hey, I'm going to get my own training session in, 2 calls, 1 podcast, write articles, put up the ads, coach 2 hours, then do this, then coach another 3 hours, then come home, then write another article. Like, now the thing is, maybe that's not what you want, but I'm just trying to say that the thing that you want, really immerse yourself to see what the people do, because that's reality. And you'll understand, and you'll really kind of get that knowledge by being around, right? That's why, like, I'll finish on this note. Mr. Beast had a great, like, the guy's obviously genius and phenomenal.
Absolutely.
And they asked him, it said, how did you grow the business? Because you have all these people working for you. And again, this is an extreme, but imagine dialing this down a little bit, right? Or he's like, well, I replicate myself. And the guy was like, what do you mean? What do you mean you replicate yourself? It's like, well, I pick a person, they apply, and they just come and live with me. And then they just follow me everywhere. And they do everything that I do in the thing that I then want them to do so I don't do it anymore. Right?
Wow. Yeah,
and
that's like, brilliant. Oh my gosh.
And he's like, what do you mean? It's like, no, like they just live with me. They live with me, and it's like, okay, I do the thing, and it's like, you see how I'm doing the thing? And then you go, like, I'm going to keep showing you for months and months and months and months and months. Yeah. And then they go, and then they do that thing with somebody else. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
But it's like, brilliant. You can't show up. You can't show up and go like, hey, yo, can you show me a quick tutorial on ScreenFlow? Like, no, dude, I need you to live with me for 3 months. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. So and again, I'm saying this as an extreme. I know that's not always possible, but I want you to take that perspective and the principle, right? Like when we talked about speed training, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm going to go to the event. I'm going to watch everything. I'm going to watch the videos. I'm going to try to spend time with them. I'm going to pay them if I possibly can to take me through the sessions.
Yes.
And then I'm going to start doing it myself, and then I'm going to start applying it to others. And I'm going to do a fuck ton of it. I'm going to do so much of it that I'm like, okay, now I'm really good at this shit. Right?
Yep.
So, and I could tell you, by the way, whether we talk, we could go completely lateral and go like, all right, YouTube, go, 3, 2, 1, let's go.
No, I know.
Right? Because again, I watch some of the stuff with like, there's levels to this, right?
Yep.
If Mr. Beast watched our YouTube videos, he would give us 1,012 different modifications of what we're doing wrong, right?
Yeah. After he stopped laughing at us.
Correct. and that's not even, that's not even kind of like a hit. What it says is that like, look, there's levels to this.
Absolutely.
I'm not the person to tell you which level you want to get to, but please don't be like, I want to be the most exceptional, highest level person, and income as well in the industry. But then it's like, this is what it takes, and this is the behaviors that you're applying. Because you got to bring your behaviors up here. And the only way to know that is to be around that a lot so that you get the reality check of what it is. And that's not a bad thing. I think that's a great thing.
No. Here's what it does ultimately, too. It helps you really figure out, is that really what I want?
Correct.
You know what I mean? It's one thing to say, 100%. Oh, I want this, but I'm only willing to do this. Those are not the two. Those are not the same thing. So if you want to do this, go see what other people are doing. Watch them do it yourself. And if you can sustain that, that's the other piece, right? One thing to do what Luka does for a day or two. Can you do what Luka does for 52 weeks times 20 some years? That's a different level too. So I love that dude.
Hormozy had a tagline. He was just like, look, find a person that you want to be like, and just understand that like being like them means a lot of different things, right? But it's like, then do what they did for 10 years. Exactly what they did.
Yeah, I know.
10, right?
Yeah.
10, right?
Yeah.
Now, again, like hopefully these, taglines are just telling you a story, because I agree. Like, I don't judge anybody for whatever they want to do, right?
Yeah.
Just get clear, because I think it's great. I think if you go do something for 2 years and you give it your best and you're like, man, I don't want to do this. Great. That's great. Clarity. Awesome. And I guarantee you'll get clear on what you do want to do. But, I do think that like we live in a world where we actually have more resources than we've ever had, right? Because now you can go on do a live Zoom event. You can do a course. You can watch stuff online for free. Me and Mike are putting out podcasts and YouTube videos. It costs a lot of time and money to do all this stuff. And it's like, here you go. Like, I'm going to put up 4 or 5 new YouTube videos and 12 different, shorts every week.
Yeah.
Right? A podcast every week, articles, this, that, the other. So it's like, man, there's no excuse, right? There's no excuse, but it's going to take your time, your energy, your dedication. And you just have to, be clear on like what it takes, and then decide if that's what you want. Because Mogul Dot said it, right? Like, what is unhappiness? It's like when your reality falls short of expectations. One is happiness. When your reality exceeds expectations. So one of his recommendations is like, don't have too many expectations. But I think when it comes to career, I do feel like that there's maybe you don't call them expectations, but you just call them performance markers, or just like when you have to complete a class, it's like these are the requirements. Requirements is probably the best word, right? Like, you want to become a phenomenal coach, you're not going to do it by training people the first 5 years of your career for like 10 hours to 15 hours per week.
Absolutely.
Requirements are much higher. That's just the reality. So know the requirements for what is it that you want to achieve. Find the people that are the best in the world in that space. Follow them, invest in them, be around them physically, ideally, get their courses, and then like study them obsessively, and then, get insane amounts of practice reps with quality feedback loops in. And voila, you just baked the best bread right there.
I love it. I love it. Dude, this is amazing. Thank you so much for your time, brother. I know you got stuff going on today. Where can my people find out more about you and all the great work you're doing?
I think, three, four main spots. I'll just drop those. Instagram, I share a lot of stuff there that leads to everywhere. That's at Luka Hocevar, LukaHocevar. YouTube, same thing. You type in Luka Hocevar, my channel comes up. There's 1,700 something videos. So if you want about 8 years of watching stuff nonstop, and I keep adding shit.
Yes.
And then I have a podcast called the Vigor Life Podcast. It's pretty heavily oriented towards coaches. And my courses and workshops and stuff are on lukahocevar.com. And so that's, I also got some training programs on there that we're launching now. So those are kind of like the main hubs. There's probably more I forgot, but I'll keep it short.
I think everybody can find the stuff based off of those, and we'll make sure we get all the links in the show notes so it's easily accessible. You can find Luka. I mean, literally, just Google Luka Hocevar. You'll find stuff. So, my guy, again, thank you so much for coming on, brother. This was amazing.
My pleasure, brother. Always an honor, man.